folks. Still not feeling too good today, but I think that this video is important enough. I'm going to try to get through it. So I may be coughing a lot, so it may be kind of annoying. So if you don't want to watch me cough, no, but I'm just still really under the weather today. My eyes look like scary. But like I said, I just think that this is really an important video, and for as long as I can talk, I don't feel like sitting up very long. But yeah, and I know some of you are going to be going, "You should be resting," and I agree. But I'll go lay down. And I slept until 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm usually up at 4 or 5. And so I slept until about 10 to 8, which is highly unusual. I haven't slept that late probably in 2 years. But my body obviously needed it, or I wouldn't have slept that long. But anyway, enough about my ailments. This is part 2, of course, of the Kiely video on the trafficking aspect. And today, I'm going to be getting into naming some specific companies and people. Now, in the last video, see, I can't even talk today. In the last video, we saw that the United States, we watched that or listened to the video from Redacted about child trafficking in the U.S., and we learned that the United States is the world leader in child trafficking. We also saw that our own government was involved in child trafficking. We know that the Department of Homeland Security is involved in child trafficking. And like I said yesterday, keep in mind that Homeland Security was involved in the search for Kiely Rodni. Why? A girl goes missing. She hasn't even been missing for 24 hours, and DHS is out there? No, that's highly unusual. We also saw how they have camps set up to store these kids like they're some type of commodity, which to them, that's what they are. You know, some commodity waiting to be shipped to their buyers. These children are sold for forced labor, they're sold as sex slaves, and many of them are simply killed and their organs are harvested and sold on the black market. There's many rich and influential people involved in this child trafficking effort. And we are fully aware that these child traffickers have recruited many actors, actresses, television personalities, musicians, and even law enforcement at all levels to aid in trafficking these kids. It's absolutely atrocious what people will do for money. It's horrendous. The level of depravity in the people involved in this is just almost beyond belief. How depraved and sick and perverted do you have to be to exploit kids for money? I know it's a lot of money, but still, that doesn't justify it. That's an understatement. But in the end, as I've said, that's what it all boils down to, is money. Now, I want to start off this video with an article I found in doing the research on this. And this is just one of many examples of how these traffickers operate. And this article is from Time. Now, we'll learn about this later, but I'm surprised it's with Time, who's involved with Time Warner, who's involved with trafficking, as we'll see later. I'm surprised it's as honest as it is, but as many people as knew about this, they took it easy on them, let's put it this way. But it still exposes what happened. But it says, the dark cult with billionaires, stars, and allegations of sex slavery. And you see the picture here of this dude. It's Keith Rainier, however you pronounce it. I just say Mr. Scumbag. It says NXIVM had all the hallmarks of a money scamming cult. But the truth was far, far worse. Devotees of the upstate self-help organization pay thousands of dollars for seminars where colored sashes denoting their rank spout Scientology-like jargon. Big surprise there. And literally bow before leader Keith Rainier, whom they call the Vanguard. NXIVM, pronounced NXIVM, has deep pockets, outposts around the world, and draws celebrity attendees, including actresses Allison Mack, Kristen Cruick, and Nikki Klein, which I'd never heard of any of them, and even hosted the Dalai Lama at an event in 2008. But behind the scenes, Rainier has been blackmailing his female followers into becoming sex slaves branded with his initials, while other women in the group are made to wear fake cow udders on their bare breasts in acts of ritual humiliation, federal prosecutors allege. Yeah, people are sick. On Monday, Rainier's secret world came crashing down when authorities tracked him down in Mexico after a months-long manhunt and arrested him for sex trafficking and forced labor. He was arraigned in Texas on Tuesday and will now be brought to Brooklyn to face justice after what prosecutors say has been a lifetime of scamming and abusing women. Yeah, I know somebody else that likes to scam and abuse women. Don't we, Jeff? Born in Brooklyn in 1960 to an advertising executive dad and former dance teacher mom who raised him in the suburbs, Rainier claims to have been a child prodigy who achieved the 1989 Guinness World Record for highest IQ and boasts of obtaining 3 degrees from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. In reality, investigators say Rainier struggled to complete his courses and graduated with a 2.26 GPA. That's far from a genius there, dude. Having failed on barely passed many of the upper-level math and science classes he bragged about taking, Brooklyn U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue wrote in court documents. Whatever the truth, those who know Rainier frequently describe him as a deeply charismatic man who easily convinces others of his own brilliance. As early as 1984, at age 24, he manipulated a 15-year-old girl into a 4-month sexual relationship. The woman, Gina Melita, told the Albany Times-Union. He took her to video game arcades where he was partial to an Atari shooter called Vanguard, the title he would later adopt as leader of NXIVM. After working various gigs, including as an Amway salesman, Rainier made his first foray into multi-level marketing in 1990 with the buyers club called Consumers Byline that soon boasted 200,000 members nationwide. That year, he allegedly molested the 12-year-old daughter of a Consumers Byline employee after grooming her as her tutor, according to the victim. I was perfect picking, insecure at the time, the victim, who later reported Rainier to local police, told the Times-Union. To have someone that mature and that well thought of to be interested in me, it was flattering. I was young, inexperienced, overwhelmed, out of my league. The girl's case was never prosecuted. Why? But Consumers Byline quickly attracted the attention of authorities as a suspected pyramid scheme, and in 1996, Rainier settled the lawsuit with the New York State Attorney General, agreeing to shutter the company and pay a $40,000 fine. A year later, the smooth-talking salesman met a nurse named Nancy Saltzman, a practitioner of hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, rebranded itself as a self-help guru for business bigwigs, and together they formed a training center called Executive Success Programs just outside Albany. It was a hit. Within 5 years, thousands of people had bought into Rainier's hype and taken his seminars at satellite centers across the country, including high-profile figures like Black Entertainment Television co-founders Sheila Johnson, former U.S. Surgeon General Antonio Novello, and Emilio Salinas, the son of former Mexican President Carlos Salinas de Gortari. Sisters Claire and Sarah Bronfman, heiresses to the Seagram's liquor fortune, became devotees of the group named NXIVM in 2002, bringing their large pocketbooks with them. But the next year, people started asking questions when Forbes published a bombshell report revealing not only Rainier's past with Consumers Byline, but also the group's eyebrow-raising practices. I think it's a cult, Edgar Bronfman Sr. bluntly told the magazine, explaining that his daughters had donated millions and hadn't spoken to him in months. Upon the article's release, actress Goldie Hawn pulled out of a scheduled speaking engagement at an NXIVM event. But stunningly, the sashes, the bowing, the hero worship, and the bizarre monikers masked far more disturbing things going on behind the scenes. From the earliest days, Rainier parlayed his female followers' devotion into sexual relationships, keeping a rotating group of 15 to 20 women with whom he maintained sexual relationships, prosecutors wrote in their criminal complaint. Many lived with him at his Clifton Park, New York townhouse, while other followers moved nearby. I found it fascinating that these beautiful, smart women knew about each other and didn't seem upset to share Keith, said Christine Marie, who was hired by the company in 1998 and soon began a sexual relationship with Rainier. Still, it seemed like secret polygamy to me, she said. By the way, that's really not all that uncommon today for women to know that some guys sleeping with other chicks, but they don't care. Rainier's twisted sexual beliefs made their way into the NXIVM curriculum, too, with disturbing hypotheticals that challenged whether incest and rape were actually wrong, prosecutors charge. Rainier physically assaulted at least 2 intimate partners and punished one 20-something NXIVM member who developed romantic feelings for someone else by keeping her confined for 18 months, according to court documents. And he created a spin-off men's movement where women were humiliated for their inherent weaknesses by being forced to wear fake cow udders over their breasts while people called them derogatory names, prosecutors allege. Man, this dude, sicko. Some of Rainier's sexual history, including with underage girls, was exposed in a 2012 series of articles in the Times-Union. Yet NXIVM continued to operate and prosper, thanks in part to the Bronfman sisters' ability to bankroll lawsuits against a growing number of critics according to a 2010 Vanity Fair profile of what it called a multi-million-dollar, multi-front legal war. In 2015, things got even more disturbing. That's the year Rainier formed a secret society within his secret society called the Vow, where women were recruited to be slaves under the false pretense of joining a women-only mentorship group. Female NXIVM members were told they had an opportunity to join an organization that would change their life, but had to provide collateral, like sexually explicit photos or videos accusing friends and family of horrendous acts to get in. Among those who signed up were Canadian actress Sarah Edmondson and India Oxenberg, the daughter of Dynasty star Catherine Oxenberg. Only once the women had handed over the collateral that they were told they were now a slave, a subservient to another slave who was now their master, prosecutors say. Many of the women say they were branded near their groins with Rainier's initials in a filmed ceremony as other slaves held them down. Jeez. This is just sick. It was like a bad horror movie. We even had these surgical masks on because the smell of flesh was so strong. I felt petrified. I felt every part of my body was like, "Get out of here, run," Edmondson wrote in Vice. The women were also ordered by their masters to have sex with Rainier and endure torture, including sleep deprivation, ice-cold showers, and extreme low-calorie diets, prosecutors say. When the Secret Slave Society was revealed in an October 2017 article in the New York Times, the FBI began probing Rainier in NXIVM, and he fled to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with the help of Claire Bronfman's cash, according to court documents. It says he attempted to go off the grid using a bank account in one of his dead lover's names that was stocked with $8 million as law enforcement closed in. But even as Rainier was hauled away from the luxury villa where he was hiding out, his pull on female followers remained strong. They jumped in a car and tried to chase him down in a high-speed pursuit, according to Donahue. All right, that's just one. I mean, these are sickos, people. These are absolute sickos. Absolute sickos. I'm sure that. I mean, it just makes me cringe to read this stuff. But I think it's important that we understand the kind of people that we're dealing with when it comes to trafficking stuff. The next example is of a person I would think most people have heard of, and that is Jeffrey Epstein, who was sent to prison for statutory rape, sex trafficking. He ended up dying in prison on August 10th, 2019, at the age of 66. Same as me. This man was nothing but a pervert. He exploited hundreds, if not thousands, and maybe even into the millions, I don't know, of children as part of his perversion and his sex trafficking endeavors. As we will learn as we go through the rest of this video, he had many affiliations with other people and other organizations. And here's the thing. He is dead. But those other affiliations and businesses, front businesses is what they are, that assisted him, that aided him, and were in bed with him as far as the trafficking goes, they're still operating today, very strongly, in fact. The companies involved are very lucrative. They have very deep pockets. And the thing is, they are disguised as legitimate businesses. But I'm going to expose a few of them in this video. They're not going to like it. So I'm sticking my neck out, people. Unlike some of the other Kiely videos that you've seen, this is real stuff here. This is exactly what's going on. Now, I want to go through an article about Jeffrey Epstein's exploits, and I also want to look at the official indictment, the court document, the indictment under which he was prosecuted, and also under which he was sent to prison. All right, it says, Jeffrey Epstein, the wealthy financier previously convicted as a sex offender, was arrested July 6th on sex trafficking and conspiracy charges over allegations that he paid girls as young as 14 for sex and used them to recruit other young girls between 2002 and 2005. Okay, obviously, this isn't a current article, but it's one that I wanted to use to show you what he did. A criminal indictment unsealed July 8th in Manhattan federal court claims Epstein sexually exploited dozens of minor girls starting in 2002. Epstein is said to have abused girls in his homes in both New York and Palm Beach, Florida. At both locations, Epstein recruited victims to give him massages that quickly turned sexual. Doesn't that sound like a pro quarterback that we're all familiar with? Deshaun Watson. It quickly turned sexual, prosecutor said. Epstein paid his victims hundreds of dollars in cash, according to the indictment. Epstein, 66, allegedly sought out minors and was aware that many of his victims were under 18 because, in some instances, minor victims expressly told him their age, prosecutors wrote. Moreover, and in order to maintain and increase the supply of victims, Epstein also paid certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused by Epstein. Prosecutors wrote in the indictment. In this way, Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit in locations including New York and Palm Beach. Epstein is accused of paying girls hundreds of dollars after the sexual encounters and creating a network where minors were always available to him by paying his victims to recruit other girls. According to the indictment, Epstein's employees also scheduled the sexual encounters and recruited girls. God, what a bunch of perverts. This allowed Epstein to create an ever-expanding web of new victims, Berman told reporters on July 8th. All right, now, here we go. United States District Court, Southern District of New York, United States of America versus Jeffrey Epstein. Count 1, sex trafficking conspiracy. As set forth herein, over the course of many years, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls at his homes in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, among other locations. In particular, from at least in or about 2002 up to and including at least in or about 2005, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited minor girls to visit his mansion in Manhattan, New York, the New York residence, and his estate in Palm Beach, Florida, the Palm Beach residence, to engage in sex acts with him, after which he would give the victim hundreds of dollars in cash. Moreover, and in order to maintain and increase his supply of victims, Epstein also paid certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused by Epstein. Now, some of this is redundant, but I want to go through this indictment, even though we kind of already read some of this. In this way, Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit in locations including New York and Palm Beach. They don't mention California, but that was, I don't know that he actually abused any in California, but he is associated with businesses in California. The victims described herein were as young as 14 years old at the time, and they were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, and were, for various reasons, often particularly vulnerable to exploitation. Epstein intentionally sought out minors and knew that many of his victims were in fact under the age of 18, including because in some instances minor victims especially told him their age. In creating and maintaining this network of minor victims in multiple states to sexually abuse and exploit. Now notice they say multiple states, so California could be included in that. They only specifically mention New York and Florida in the indictment, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't other things that occurred elsewhere. But I haven't been able to find any information on that. The defendant worked and conspired with others, including employees and associates who facilitated his conduct by, among other things, contacting victims and scheduling their sexual encounters with Epstein at the New York residence and at the Palm Beach residence. Beginning in at least 2002, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited, is all that legal jargon, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited dozens of minor girls to engage in sex acts with him, after which Epstein paid the victims hundreds of dollars in cash at the New York residence and the Palm Beach residence. In both New York and Florida, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, perpetuated this abuse in similar ways. Victims were initially recruited to provide massages to Epstein, which would be performed nude or partially nude, would become increasingly sexual in nature, and would typically include one or more sex acts. I wonder if this guy wrote a handbook for Deshaun Watson. Now, if you're not a football person, you're probably not even going to know who he is, but you guys who follow football know exactly who I'm talking about. The quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, who quit on his team last Sunday. Epstein paid his victims hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter. Moreover, Epstein actively encouraged certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly sexually abused. Epstein incentivized his victims to become recruiters by paying these victim recruiters hundreds of dollars for each girl that they brought to Epstein. In so doing, Epstein maintained a steady supply of new victims to exploit. Okay, I have to ask this question. Where's mom and dad? Where's mom and dad? Aren't mom and dad even wondering where they're getting all this extra money? Because they got women have to spend money. That's innate. So, if they're buying whatever it is that they're spending it on, don't you think mom and dad would think, how are they able to afford that? Where are you getting this extra money from? But that just kind of shows how parents don't pay any attention today. They're busy with their own things. Anyway, additionally, and to further facilitate his ability to abuse minor girls in New York, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, asked and enticed certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to perform massages and similarly engage in sex acts with Epstein. When a victim would recruit another girl for Epstein, he paid both the victim recruiter and the new victim hundreds of dollars in cash. Through these victim recruiters, Epstein gained access to and was able to abuse dozens of additional minor girls. I bet it's more than dozens. All right, statutory allegations. From at least in or about 2002 up to and including in or about 2005 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, and others known and unknown willfully and knowingly did combine, conspire, confederate, and agree together and with each other to commit an offense against the United States, to wit, sex trafficking of minors in violation of blah, 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 blah. It says it was a part and object of the conspiracy that Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, and others known and unknown would and did, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, and obtain by any means a person, and to benefit financially and by receiving anything of value from participation in a venture which has engaged in any such act, knowing that the person had not attained the age of 18 years and would be caused to engage in a commercial sex act. Okay. Why can you say in a simple short sentence what you can say in a whole paragraph? But that's lawyers. All right, count 2, sex trafficking. From about, at least in or about 2002, blah, 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 Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, willfully, knowingly, blah, 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 in and effect interstate and foreign commerce, did recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, blah, 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 knowing that the person had not attained the age of 18 years and would be caused to engage in a commercial sex act, and did aid and abet the same, to wit, Epstein recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, blah, 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 blah. All right. Recruited a bunch of chicks that were less than 18 years old. All right. So, yeah, then it's a lot of a lot of legalese. Yeah. Got to have all that legalese and make it look official, right? All right. So that's Epstein. Now, here's the thing. The reason I bring Epstein up is because as a result of knowing what we've learned about him, and as a result of obtaining his black book with all his other contacts and friends and everything else in it, we have found that there are other enterprises involved. Now, I'm going to look at a couple of the companies who were deeply involved with this and are deeply involved with it in the state of California. And that's how it pertains to Kiely Rodni. Okay, so you got these companies, these entities that are involved with this. And let me also mention, as I said at the beginning, the federal government is involved in this, as well as local law enforcement that have been bribed and recruited. And let me tell you, people, this trafficking effort goes all the way to the top. Because when you have Department of Homeland Security and all these federal agencies involved in this, there's absolutely no way that all of these federal employees are involved in this without it being known and also condoned by the White House, as well as the higher-ups in the Department of Justice. And this just shows how depraved and abhorrent our government is at its very core. Our government is corrupt. Utterly corrupt. Now, the first company, or I should say the first front company, because, yeah, these are legitimate businesses, people, but they are front companies for child trafficking. But the first one I want to mention that was involved with Epstein and still is, and is still very, very extremely involved in heading up the trafficking efforts, is Kiely Systems. All right, let me see here. Kiely Management Services. Welcome to Kiely Management Services, LLC. Kiely Management Services is a government and professional. Now, notice it says, is a government and professional service, not just private, but government and professional services company that provides program management, consulting, and technology services to governments from the local to the federal level. Now, Kiely has gone over some changes through the years. I want to give you a quick history, and you're going to quickly see why I am going through this. But you see, it was formerly Kiely Systems from 1966 to 71, and then Kiely Services from 1971 to 1972. All right. Now, before that, now you notice it says industry entertainment. Very pertinent statement right there. Now, excuse me. The predecessor was Kiely Parking Company. All right, so that was their main thing, is they ran a lot of the parking garages and stuff like that for the city. In fact, they still are over many of the parking systems, like in New York City, because that's where their home office is. All right, it says that they went defunct in 1972. Fate Corporation's restructuring and reincorporated as Warner Communications Incorporated. Isn't that interesting? It's the same people, the same perverts. Went from Kiely Systems, even though it still exists, but Kiely Systems is now run by Warner Communications. Time Warner, Warner Communications, National Kiely Corporation, all the same thing. Now, here's something that's interesting. You see, Kiely Systems is still listed. Now, it appears it's gone out of business, but look at the phone number, 212-744-5511. Okay, now, the following entry is from Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, from his entries in there. Notice the number, 212-744-5511. Tahoe Garage. Now, Tahoe Garage is not in California. Copper, get out here and quit making noise. Come on. Get out of here. That's a good boy. Tahoe Garage is in New York City. But that phone number actually goes to a lot of different places. Because the interesting thing is this. If you reference this phone number, you not only see it connected with Kiely Systems, but it is also connected with the central parking system in New York City. It's also connected to another business in New York City called Garage Corp. Now, keep in mind that this was originally Kiely Systems' main business in the beginning was parking. But when I did an actual lookup on the actual business, this Garage Corp, it tells me this. Garage Corp filed as a domestic business corporation in the state of New York and is no longer active. Now, it didn't tell me when it went out of business, but it says it's no longer active. However, this is probably because now that Warner Communications is over the operation, parking is no longer one of their main business ventures. Now, the fact is that Warner Communications, Warner Brothers, all that stuff, all part of Warner Communications. CNN is also part of Warner Communications. I believe one reason that you see so many accusations of celebrities being involved in trafficking is because of Warner Communications. Warner Communications, from what I was able to find, has over $136 billion in assets. They have deep pockets. Now, Warner Brothers, Warner Communications, whatever you want to call them, Kiely Systems, and other associated organizations while they may be legitimate businesses on one end, they are still the devil's henchmen on the other end, aiding and abetting in the child trafficking trade. They are fronts. They are front businesses. Even though they may be successful businesses, they're still front businesses for the child trafficking. Read somewhere that trafficking just in the United States, I think it was. I may be wrong on this. This may be worldwide. But it was $134 billion a year industry. Do you realize how many kids have to be trafficked to make $134 billion? Now, the next business that is a front for the trafficking industry, and this is probably a bigger player, that is FJR Services. They are a major player. And they're very closely connected with Warner, and they were also a major player in Epstein's trafficking schemes. All right, so let's take a look at them. Where is FJR Services Incorporated's headquarters? FJR Services Incorporated's headquarters is located at Brooklyn, New York. All right, what is FJR Services Inc.'s industry? FJR Services is in the industry of other professional, scientific, and technical services. Oh, okay. Didn't we read that before? Now, there are two people who are listed in Epstein's Black Book, and that is Joseph Matias Rueda and Florena Amores Rueda. All right. So in 2017, they filed bankruptcy, probably in Reno, but it was in the U.S. Bankruptcy Courts, Nevada, which is probably, since they live in that area, it was probably in Reno. Well, I don't know if they still live there or not, but I think they do. And also, too, here, these are entries from Epstein's Black Book. Joseph and Florena Rueda. All right. No, and those are both California area codes. But they're also, he's got a lot of these 212 area code. There we go, Tahoe Garage there, which is highlighted. Got a lot of different, look at all these 212, 879, 836, 879, a lot of business contacts with the 212 area code. Yeah. All right, so he had some connection to Tahoe Garage. Now, I want to say the CEO or the head, or actually I think she's listed as the president, is this Beverly Smith. President, FJR Services. We find her connected with several different businesses. Of course, here we have FJR Services. A little bit more research, and we see her LGM Holdings in Carson City, Nevada. All right, do you remember me talking about these holding companies, which my informant told me that a lot of people, like in the Truckee area, very well-known names, launder money through these holding companies. And here, I guarantee you, this is one of the main players right here. It is LGM Holdings, LLC. She's a managing member. All right, and then we see the Ultimate Party Store in Las Vegas, managing member. Now, I haven't really looked into them much, but I may do that in the future just to see what I can find. This video is already going to be long enough, so it's like I just wanted to hit the main things I was familiar with. And then we see LES Trucking in Orangevale, California. She's secretary, and she's also listed as the treasurer. Okay, so all of these people and businesses mentioned are closely tied to Epstein. There are also very prominent families in the Truckee area who are also tied to them, and also closely tied to influential people in government and in particularly the CIA. Now, keep in mind also that Kiely was dating Nate Hambrecht, who is the son of Robert Hambrecht, whose father is William Hambrecht, who we know for a fact is involved or is part of the CIA. Now we know for a fact. In fact, if you can go back and look at some of the redacted videos, they talk about this, how the CIA is heavily involved in trafficking, and they are also heavily involved in supplying arms and ammunition to the cartels in Mexico. The majority of the weapons that the cartels down there get are from us and are supplied by the CIA and probably DHS. People, our entire government system is as corrupt as the devil. It's totally corrupt. Okay, now I'm going to be very honest about some things here. You see, this is why it's so hard for us to get answers in the Kiely Rodni case. This is why this entire case has seemed so strange. This is why I believe people have been afraid to come forward and why people broke off contact with me. I think they were threatened. I think this is why the Department of Homeland Security was involved in the search for a missing 16-year-old girl, which never happens. For a missing girl, you've got, this is why the FBI had 50 agents on the scene within 24 to 48 hours. Are you serious? People, you don't have any idea how unusual that is. I mean, it's the first that I've heard. There's absolutely nothing about anything about this. There's nothing about this case that makes sense. Okay, let me put it that way. Unless we look at it from this perspective, that there was some high-level players involved in her disappearance. As I stated yesterday, the person giving me all of the intel on this, or at least part of the intel, a good chunk of it, and he knows what he's talking about. This person had his own informants who told him that Kiely was trafficked and then later killed. He also told me that Lindsay got quite a sizable payoff. I don't know. I'm just saying that's what he told me. Nobody will ever convince me that it was Kiely in that vehicle. Never. But unfortunately, And I'm just being honest with you, people. There's other stuff I know, but I can't. I'm debating releasing it, but I don't want to get anybody else in trouble. And I don't want to get anybody else killed. No, and that's not an exaggeration by any means. It's not hyperbole. But unfortunately, considering all the people involved, this is why we may never get any answers and never get justice for Kiely unless something miraculous happens. Unless God steps in and does something miraculous, it's never going to happen. And I'm just being honest. Because I know other names I could name. Right now, I don't feel safe doing that. I hope you understand that. This is YouTube. I'm not going to get killed over YouTube. I'm already probably said too much as it is in this video, but the thing is, and the truth is, that it just goes too high up. There are too many powerful people involved in this. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but I'm just trying to be realistic. Be honest and realistic. Right now, to be honest, we're up against a brick wall or a titanium wall. We're simply banging our heads against the wall. Unless something miraculous happens. And that's where I believe prayer can change things. Now, does that mean that we're giving up? Oh, nuh-uh. No. I will never give up. Even though the odds seem totally stacked against us, even like it seems, considering the circumstances, that there's no chance we're going to get any answers because of all the influential and powerful people involved. I still refuse to give up. But let me just say, those of you who believe in prayer, that's our only hope. Knowing all the people who are involved in this, and there are many others that I cannot name right now, or put it this way, that I don't feel safe naming. But let's not give up. If you believe in prayer, let's pray. If we're ever going to find justice for Kiely, and by the way, let me just say, and I said this yesterday, all this nonsense that Jeff Noyes and Adventures on Purpose is coming up with, it's a bunch of malarkey. Jared Lysick was not involved in it. All these other people that he's saying it's some conspiracy and all that, it's his fantasy world. It's all a bunch of fantasy stuff that he's made up. Don't listen to anything he says. He doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. None. People, we need to pray. We need to... I'm trying to find my mouse thing here. Okay, there we go. We need to pray because right now, people, when you've got government as high up as this goes involved in this, I mean, you've seen how strange this case has been, and that's exactly why. Knowing what I know, the only shot we have is divine intervention. That's our only hope, people. Now, if you don't believe in God, then just turn your back and whatever. But if you do, if you believe in prayer, then pray. Because right now, people, I'm telling you, knowing what I know, that is our only hope.